What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another edition of the Dear Critics Review. This time we're looking at Q3 2021. And as always, we've got a big quarter to break down. And speaking of breaking things down, from the Backlog Breakdown podcast, I've got Nate McKeever with me. How you doing, Nate?
I'm appreciating that transition. Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
It was, but yeah, no, I'm doing good, man. Just living the dream.
Excellent. Well, yeah, man, we have a lot to get to. So let's go ahead and just look at the standings as they are right now. First place, Alex, of course, when in the lead, 128 points, Jersey Recon Studios. Eddie Taylor, second place, Crystal Cross, 56 points. Nate, your beatdown games, 48 points in third place. In fourth, Amanda Boomstick Syndicate, 47 points. In fifth place, Adam with Bearded Brethren Games over with 45 points. Impowerful is next up. Marshall, 40 points. Doug's Vest Digital in seventh with 31 points. Eighth place is Wolfpack Initiative, only 10 points. And bringing up the rear, Luke Strain, Luke King Games, 8 points. Real quick, Nate, before we dive into all the games that came out this quarter, you're sitting there in third place. I know Alex has already pretty much locked up that top position, but you're sitting there in third, and it's your first year playing the game. How you feeling about that third place spot so far?
It's been kind of fun. And I'm pretty optimistic because I still have I've only got 4 games on the board. So, if I have a couple, big hitters, it could cinch up second. I think at this point in time, and you and I have sort of talked about it, like this game is solid, and we've talked about it in the chat, like this game is solidly Alex's.
Yeah.
And I have to give sort of credit where credit's due. I was listening to Adam on this last episode of the TRG sort of talk or whatever, and it really that Balin Wonderworld counter pick, I think, dude, and obviously he's managed to pick 80s. Surprise. Yeah, that's a winning strategy. But
he got us.
He got us. But that counter pick, I think, really just, where everybody else's counter pick is not really adding anything, we'll get to my counter pick later on. Yeah. But I think that really has just, and he has picked some real bangers. It's one of those things where I don't want this to seem like I'm blowing smoke or whatever, but man, his savvy this year, he's killed it. His selection, uncanny.
Yeah, we can get into it when we talk about Alex's roster. But yeah, he really crushed it. I feel kind of sad for you and Adam because this is our third year playing. It has not been. This is the biggest, far and away he's going to win. It's been much closer coming down to the wire in years past.
To be fair, I feel fairly strongly that I've got a solid chance at least second, and that's that's exciting, you know. So it's just fun. So this is kind of cool. I'm hyped.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go down. Let's go ahead and list all the games that came out this quarter. I believe we had 17 total games, which is pretty good considering we had really a short quarter because we recorded the last one about a month late or so. So let me just read off all these games real quick in order of release. Here we go. Axiom Verge 2, Garden Story, Humankind, 12 Minutes, Psychonauts 2, No More Heroes 3, Life is Strange, True Colors, Tales of Arise, WarioWare, Get It Together, Deathloop, Eastward, Game Deck, Kena, Bridge of Spirits, Diablo 2 Resurrected, Sable, Lost Judgment, and Hot Wheels Unleashed. Okay, Nate, we didn't have a single game this quarter that released a 90 or above, and we didn't have a single game this quarter that released a 69 or below. So it's either 70s or 80s, pretty average or pretty good. Nothing really out, crazy, busting out, kind of, being wild out there. So let's take a look at, what we always do is kind of, we break down each other's rosters. I get the guests, we talk about, my roster and the guest roster, but you don't have any games released this quarter, a big zero for beatdown games. So I guess we'll get to some of your roster in just a minute, but for myself, I had 3 games. I had Kena Bridge of Spirits, I had Sable, and I had WarioWare. Kana got me an 82, Sable got me a 75, and WarioWare got me a 77. Out of those 3, Nate, which of those you want to talk about?
I mean, I do want to say, like, I'm really glad that Kana came out as well as it did.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were sort of talking a little bit, sort of, I don't know if we were texting or whatever, but no, we were recording. We were recording the night that the embargo lifted. We were recording our Control
Yes.
episode,
Yes.
but and it was like the everything surrounding that game got really spooky because it was like radio silence. They had an embargo up until like basically it released, and I mean, especially in sort of like the environment, I guess, in sort of just like games and sort of just how they get received. Like that messages some 9 times out of 10, if I see that, like I'm like, oh, that's bad.
Yep.
And so like that got real spooky.
Mm-hmm.
But it came out strong. I think that night, like later, the next day when I was looking at the scores, it peaked at like 88, 89 in a couple places. And
Yeah.
then some more reviews came in and brought it down. But I mean, I think too, like, it's just really cool to see this Sony exclusive sort of like, this is another, it's not, again, this isn't like a runaway, like awesome, but it's a banger. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad, like, because I feel like this kind of like hits, this kind of like speaks to, I think, some of the weaknesses that Sony has this console gen, but
Mm-hmm.
and we're still fairly early on in that cycle, so not
Yeah,
getting ahead.
I try to, for a lot of the bigger release games, I try to keep my finger on the pulse of when the embargo dates are. I can't
Mhm.
keep up with every single game, but for the big releases, I try to know, all right, it's dropping on Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern or whatever, and be ready to go and kind of watch the scores and stuff like that. So I was searching and searching for when is the embargo for Can. I couldn't find it. And we were just a few days away from release. And finally, I realized I found from someone that it was literally releasing like at midnight the day it releases. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh no. Oh, and so I was sort of sounding the alarm in the thread, in the group thread that we have. But yeah, it turned out pretty good. So really pleased with Kana. Can't say as much for something like Sable, which Nate, you wouldn't know, but I have history. This is my second, possibly third year drafting this game.
Well, you and I have sort of off and on talked about this. Like you tweeted out like gifs and screenshots of this, and I was like, oh, this looks super dope. Cause like
Mhm.
I like the vibe, but I
Yeah.
mean it is sort of unknown. And I mean, like honestly, indies, indies can be pretty middling. Like, don't get me wrong, they're like
Sure.
definitely standouts, but like it's sort of it's always a, what's the word? It's a bit of a gamble, I guess, is sort
Hmm.
of like, and I think it looked really cool. And I've heard really good things about it. I just think it's like one of those things that because it is such a sort of a different vibe than I think and I'm using that word a lot, but it's just such a
Hmm.
different kind of game that it's not going to find mass success.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay, well let's move on from talking about ourselves a little bit and talk about the rest of the league. And namely, we have to talk about Alex. He had 3 games released this quarter, and wouldn't you know it, they're 80s. Well, except for Axiom Verge 2, he got a 78. Ho hum. But otherwise, he got Life is Strange True Colors, got him an 81. And then Tales of Arise, man, this series is just building and building momentum. I feel like I think it's selling well finally. Not that the others sold poorly, but it's selling really, really well. And 88 is like right up there with the top scores of the year. So
I
yeah,
just
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to like my thoughts, like that was actually kind of a surprise to me that Tails hit that hard.
Mhm.
If I remember correctly, this Tails is actually the first Tails that they've made with a basically a lot of the prior Tales team has left from what, if I'm remembering
Okay.
correctly. Like this is sort of like a new team, almost a new studio dealing with this. I could be totally wrong. And
Okay.
so there was a
Fact check us
lot
on
of,
that, Alex.
yeah, yeah. Feel free to check me on that. But it was like, and Tales have been, it's like one of those, it's sort of, if you're a fan of the Tales games, you're a fan and you're really into them.
Hmm.
But and they're pretty common, I guess, or they show up in a lot of like talks when we're talking, like conversations surrounding JRPGs and things like that. But like that was, I'll be honest, that was just a bit of a surprise that like hit as hard as it did. Like for it to come out and hit an 88. I mean, and maybe what was that? Scarlet Nexus was sort of like, foreshadowing some of the success of the studio. I
Hmm.
know it seems like, because Scarlet Nexus did pretty well too. I
Hmm.
don't think this well, but it came out and it sort of like, it threw some weight around. So I was surprised to see it hit that high, but pleasantly so.
Hmm.
You know.
Hmm. I'm just looking at the website here, and I don't know if something was updated with the projections or what, but it looks like Amanda is actually in third place now, and you're in fourth. I'm not sure
Hmm.
because I took that screenshot earlier today, but anyway, just
It
wanted to
could
make
be
that
that Halo Infinite counterpick.
small correction. I'm not sure what changed exactly, and I may have had the advanced projections on too, which could have thrown stuff off. But anyway, speaking of Amanda, she had two games released this quarter: Garden Story, which got her a 74, and Game Deck, which I knew nothing about. I had to look up today, like, what is this game? It's out there on Steam. It actually looks pretty cool, Nate. If you want to go out there and look it up, only got her a 70, a net
Mhm.
neutral, 0 points, I guess. So Amanda just kind of continues to struggle to get, other than Death's Door, which got her the whopping 88, and the aforementioned Scarlet Nexus got her an 80. She hasn't quite put it all together, though. She's right there in the mix, as far as going there for second place, but nothing too fancy. Any thoughts on Garden Story or Game Deck?
Uh, I don't know a whole lot about either one of these. Is Garden Story
Mhm.
sort of like a Harvest Moon clone kind of thing?
I believe so, but there again, I'm a
Okay.
little bit in the dark as well. Amanda, oftentimes, history has shown that she drafts these sort of games that she's really this isn't a knock in any way. It's like games that aren't on the radar of other players, and they
Mhm.
can really do great. But it's just stuff that I've never heard of, Game Deck at all. But she's like, yeah,
Is Game Deck the one that's like a collection of a bunch of like retro style
no, no,
games?
no, 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 no. It's like
Okay.
this isometric future cyberpunky looking. I mean, I may be way off. Go check it out. Just Google it. It
Yeah,
looks pretty
I'll
interesting,
Google it.
actually.
But I
Um,
mean, hey, you know what though, and that's the thing with stuff like that. It is it's more often than not, it's probably not going to get like a lot of the critical success, but like you do have the chance for just like sort of something wild to just run away. I
mhm.
mean, sometimes an indie like and again, it's the indie scene. Like those games, they tend to be pretty middling. Like they might have a good idea or two,
Yeah.
but they just never really catch. But the ones that hit super hard.
Mhm.
So, I mean, as far as like if that's like the actual strategy going forward, or if it's just like I'm just picking this stuff because I'm into it, like, hey, either way, it's doing fine. She's in third right now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know last year she got in one of the Story of Seasons games, which
mm,
Luke got one of them this year. But anyways, yeah, that's stuff that's sort of right up her alley, that Garden Story stuff. But anyway, moving on to, who do we got here? We got Jeff, Wolfpack Initiative. He picked up two games this quarter, and that would be 12 minutes. Which, man, goodness, talk about. I don't know if there's a more controversial game yet
mhm.
released this year than 12 minutes, 75, and then Diablo 2 Resurrected, which we will circle back around to this game at the end of the conversation. We're going to talk about remasters and remakes and that sort of thing. Got him an 84, outstanding score for him there. So really, I know Diablo is near and dear to your heart,
Mm,
Nate.
yeah.
12 minutes we could talk about a little bit. What do you think about these games?
Both of them like 12 minutes. Again, that's sort of one of those things that in theory, I think looks pretty interesting. And the people who are into it are super into it. Like, you don't hear like, oh, it's okay. You hear, this is the coolest thing I've played ever, or this game sucks.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, like I said, it's basically a point and click adventure from what I understand, which is not really my wheelhouse. Like I grew up on those, and I just, old game is old, man. But Diablo 2 Resurrected, or whatever that, like, I actually kind of regret, because I had thought about trying to bid that out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm glad to see it go to Jeff. And because I know that he also appreciates that series. But yeah, like I'm just stoked that it's doing well, especially with everything surrounding Blizzard. Like, with everything that came out with Blizzard, and sort of all of the lawsuits and the litigation and the
Yeah.
speculation surrounding that company right now. Like, I was really concerned that this game was going to sort of get tanked. Like,
Mm.
there's also
Like,
the chance that it just might not have been good on its own, but
yeah.
then it might have gotten tanked as sort of like a political maneuvering. But it
Yeah.
is nice to see it doing well. It's definitely like on my radar to buy at some point in time. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think, like, you know, like, I'm pleased. I if I'm Jeff, I'd be pleased with the performance of Diablo 2,
Oh,
especially.
heck yeah. I mean, I know it's the joke now, but you get anything in the 80s, that's right where you want to be. So 84 is certainly a fantastic score by any measure here. So okay, so let's move on to Bearded Brethren. Adam got himself Eastward, a lovely looking indie game, I guess, and
Hmm.
Lost Judgment, the sequel to the Yakuza series spinoff. What was the name of the first game?
Well, so if, and again, this is something that, if I understand correctly, Yakuza is actually sort of there's splitting. And the Like a Dragon is actually sort of a move into a more traditional, like, sort of turn-based kind of combat. And
Yeah.
then the this Lost Judgment is actually like the pivot into the sort of the more traditional Yakuza kind of action RPG, GTA clone kind of
Mhm.
thing. So,
Yeah.
and so this is that step into that.
Yeah. Was the first game just called Judgment?
I have no idea,
Man,
dude.
I'm trying to
Like,
remember.
there are entirely too many of these games. Like,
Well, anyway, Lost Judgment got Adam in 84. Pretty solid pickup. I think he got that
mhm,
late in the game, along with Eastward, getting him an 84 and an 85. So, yeah, pretty solid pickups there, which really places him. It gets him in the mix of that second place argument.
mhm.
There's really about 4 or 5 teams that are all right there together with like
Everybody's sort
40
of like,
something, points.
yeah.
So it's kind of up for grabs for sure. So Adam is right there among them. And yeah, getting Eastward and getting Lost Judgment will certainly help them try to get that second place.
Yeah.
Okay, Marshall is up next. M Powerful had no more. Excuse me, had Humankind released August 17th. He got him an 80, and then No More Heroes 3. Goodness gracious, this series I feel like just can't quite get off the runway. In my personal opinion, I got him a 76. Not a bad score. I don't know how those games sell. I'm a little shocked they've made a third one. They made it this far. But any thoughts about No More Heroes or Humankind, Nate?
I don't know anything about Humankind, except, is that sort of like the sim game where you start as monkeys and turn into tribes, or am I just totally off on that
I'm
one?
not sure. I'm not sure about Humankind either.
Yeah.
This is, there again, this is one good thing about the league is that it sort of opens you up to these other games you don't traditionally, look at. But
But
yeah, haven't looked at a ton of Humankind.
yeah, I would say, as far as like No More Heroes 3 goes, like that one, like, I think, like, those games fall firmly into like the cult classic realm. And again, it's
Mhm.
that sort of almost similar to like the indie thing, like, where this thing is just, it, to the people who are into it, they're super into it. But for everybody else, there's just not a ton of mass appeal. Now, I do
Yeah.
think No More Heroes was really sort of the one that, if any of them was sort of going to like break into sort of the mass appeal sort of, or leverage that series into
Mhm.
something a little bit bigger, this was the one that seemed primed to do it. But I mean, hey, it's not a bad score. It's a solid score. And the
Sure. Yeah.
game, but as far as like just it is kind of, I think, disappointing a little bit.
Mhm.
Like it seemed like, especially leading up to it, it seemed like this game was going to like really pop off, and it just never really got the traction it needed to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't have much else to say here, so let's go ahead and move on to Eddie. Crystal Cross Games got two releases this quarter. Deathloop, the long-awaited Deathloop, which has been shown many, many, many times at many different PlayStation events, got a whopping 88. It really paid off there. And then Hot Wheels Unleashed coming in hot tonight for the recording. Literally, when I sent the score for Hot Wheels Unleashed in the thread, I was sitting here at the mic ready to hit record.
Mm-hmm.
So that one came in just in time. Got a 73 for Eddie. So I was just saying in the thread, I was personally a little disappointed for Hot Wheels. I like racing games. I
Mm-hmm.
usually play maybe one a year kind of thing. Doesn't have to be sim or arcade. It's kind of whatever. Just if it looks fun, I'm gonna try it. And this was one I had my eye on. I was hoping that would get good scores. If it had over an 80, I was probably going to pick it up. Now I'm not so sure. I might wait for a deep sale or see if it lands on PS Plus or something like that.
Well, I mean, and I'm with you on that. Like, probably not even every once a year. Like maybe every couple of years. Like the racing thing, sort of. I get bit by the bug, and now I do prefer arcade racers, but
Mhm.
you know, and this might be something that I'll definitely look at. But I mean, that death loop. Like, can we
Yeah,
just talk about that for a minute? Like,
let's.
I'm so glad that this one really popped off, because when you look at Arcane Studios, like they haven't really, I mean, Dishonored was sort of a banger, one of the games that really
Right.
put them on the map. Dishonored 2 kind of came out to like middling reviews. And then Prey was sort of like and Dishonored 2 and Prey both sort of were in that, like, again, it's the people who are into it are super into it,
Hmm.
but they just don't have a ton of mass appeal. And those
Yeah.
are personally games that I really enjoyed. Dishonored 1, and I never beat Dishonored 2, but I liked what I played. And I'm just glad that they've hit something that seems like has a like just a better sort of, like, is able to grab a bit more of the market share, or like some of the attention there,
Hmm.
and garner some critical success. So
Yeah, I sort of look at arcane games from a distance and sort of admire them. I tried Dishonored and gave it a really the old college try, and just I when I play games like that, I have to have a perfect stealth run, or else I go
mm,
bonkers. So it was driving me nuts that I couldn't get these perfect runs, and so
yeah.
I just couldn't play the game. I really want to like those games more than I do, and so I didn't even touch Dishonored 2, and I'm probably not going to touch Deathloop because it looks like more of the same, and that's not a bad thing. It's great for people that love it. It's
Well, you
just not
just
for
know
me.
it's not for you, man.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's one of it's probably the number one developer that I dislike that I wish I did like, if that makes
mm,
sense. You
yeah.
know. But yeah, Deathloop 88 for Eddie. Kind of, again, he's in second place, so he's certainly one of those teams jockeying. But just kind of a little too little too late as far as catching up to Alex there.
Mhm.
All right. Lastly, is Liu King Games one game this quarter, and that would be Psychonauts 2,
If you're
which
gonna have one game drop this quarter, that's the game you want.
it wears the crown for the highest rated game of the year so far with an 89. We haven't had any game pierce over 90 yet, at least that we've drafted. That's on someone's active roster. So Psychonauts 2 is it, and Luke has it. And part of the story here is that Adam counterpicked Psychonauts 2 and really devastated his team overall. And I want to
Mm.
jump in before I get your thoughts on Psychonauts 2, because I know you're a fan of the series, Nate.
Mhm.
When Adam counterpicked Psychonauts 2, I'm like, yes, good counterpick. Straight up. I was like, that game looks like trash. I
Oh,
thought that,
dude,
man.
no,
I really
no.
did. I was with Adam. I was like, who is this
Mm-mm.
for? Who asked for this sequel? Blah blah. It's so it's so niche and just has this cult following that's like 500 people, and they're all real loud. And man, I was so wrong. Tim Schafer and company apparently cranked out, I haven't played it yet, but apparently cranked out a fantastic sequel that is full of just emotion and heart and whimsy that I'm really looking forward to playing now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So I did not expect this game to like hit the way it did. Um, I expected it to do well. And like, honestly, I think, I don't remember in the draft if I said anything or not, but like when I actually had, I was like, oh, Adam, this is not going to go well for you. Like, I'm like, yeah, go ahead and counterpick that.
It's so funny because like me and I were
It's
like,
gonna
yeah,
kill you,
yeah.
man. No, it's like I think yeah, there are a lot of questions sort of surrounding this, but and I know that Double Fine is sort of a studio that has like a lot of like really mixed success.
Mhm.
But I think them, and as much as it loathes me to say that, them going sort of almost, which is weird because they did have a partnership with Sony for a long time. They were really tight with Sony for a while,
Mhm.
but them sort of almost going home to Microsoft, because of like the PC space and everything else that they've been so involved in.
Sure.
I really think benefited that studio. And I'll be honest, like I'm a little salty that we're not getting a native PS5 version of Psychonauts 2. Like
Yeah, I heard you talk about that a little bit on the
I'm
breakdown.
cranky about
I
that.
think that might still happen. Um, yeah, quick 2 cents on that I have is,
Mhm.
they Sony didn't give the Xbox version of MLB the show.
That's exactly my point. And if Sony had done that and been like, no, we'll give you MLB the show, but we're going to give you last gen,
Yeah.
everybody, and rightfully so, would have been in an uproar.
Yeah.
And I think like the thing is like it's a situation where right now Microsoft is writing a lot of well earned, like it's earned
Mhm.
positive energy, and that's
Mhm.
cool. Like I'm there. Like, hey, you guys do you, but then when you do something like that, that just feels a little dirty.
Yeah,
Like
my only thought is that it's coming and they just didn't prioritize it. We might get it in like a month or
I
around Christmas
I
or
go back
something.
to this. I go back to this statement that who's the head of Microsoft right now? The one of the big names.
Phil
I
Spencer.
Spencer said something about like when it comes to Microsoft titles, they want it to be the first place you play or the best place to play it. And I
Hmm.
think that like since this is an in-house property, I really don't see them doing the PS5 native version. I think they did the PS4 native version because they had to,
Yeah.
but they don't have to for the PS5, and so they're not going to. They're just going to be like, well, here we're fulfilling our obligation. We're still going to make a ton of money off this, and hey, you do you. But I'm also
Yeah.
saying like I'm not a fan of that move.
They have no obligation to do that. And I
Yeah,
really wouldn't expect them to,
no,
but I'm not as passionate about it because I'm not a fan of the series like you are. So I can sort of more easily wash it off. But
I would just say like sort of actually talking about the game, it doesn't surprise me that this thing is sort of hitting the way it is because I'll tell you if you play any Double Fine game, one of the things Tim Schafer and his crew does there is they write really charming scripts. And Psychonauts, the original Psychonauts is fine. I think at this point in time it's a little dated, but I think if you played it in the time that it was from, it actually plays pretty well. I would say that I think it still sort of holds up. There are a few yeah bits, but original Psychonauts is still a really solid game. And so to see this sort of come out and I'll be honest, I think this is a studio too that I'm really excited that they've actually sort of hit like some big success. Like that this is like Psychonauts 2 there's been a ton of buzz around that. And I'm excited for that team. Like, Tim Schafer is an industry veteran, man. And I mean, he's made some really great stuff. I mean, you know, I like again, he does some of that point and click stuff, and I'm
yeah.
not about that. But Brutal Legend was awesome.
Mhm.
And there have been a few other Double Fine games that for whatever reason my brain is not letting me remember that I
What
played.
did you think of the game Stacking?
It was fine. That one was like it was a really interesting sort of game, and it's been a number of years since I played it. It was like one of those things where it was kind of like an interesting idea, but it
Mm,
wasn't. I just don't think there was like a compelling enough sort of like hook to drag you through the rest of the game. It's
yeah.
like, oh, okay, like meh.
Yeah, that's just one that stands out in my memory that I played during the
Mhm.
PS3 era. But
Yeah, I mean,
Nate, I know you're more of let's bust down our backlogs and let's play older games kind of stuff.
mhm.
Have you played any of these games at all? Have you touched any of these games that released this quarter?
Have I touched any of them? No. Like,
Okay.
I don't think. Let me look here.
Out of the list, which one do you want to play first? Which one are you going to pick up and play?
I mean, Eastward looks. I'll just throw like Diablo 2 is sort of a given for me at some point in time.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. So that one's Eastward. I think looks pretty interesting.
It does.
It's like one. I think that like I just really dig the aesthetic. It's
Yeah.
sort of got that. I don't Cal Arts kind of like illustration vibe that I'm kind of into right now. And so Deathloop is kind of like on my list of like, yeah, maybe someday.
Hmm.
Tales of Arise, I'm interested in, but I also need another JRPG, like I need a hole in my head. Um, the one that I'm really the most excited about is probably the one that I'm probably going to hold off on playing for a while is Psychonauts 2, man. Like
Okay.
if I had to
Yeah.
pick a game out of this list, it's like if I could have a PS5 native version or if I had like an Xbox Series S and I could play that with, like because at this point in time, like I have sort of like I want all the frames. Like give me
Yeah.
those shiny bells and whistles. But yeah, like that's probably the one that like on this list that at some point in time, like that's the one I'm most excited about.
Okay, and we ask this every episode, and I think I probably know your answer. But out of the list, what game surprised you with its score, either for better or for worse? Which one sort of was like, I was not expecting that, and it got that?
I mean, Psychonauts hit a little harder than I thought it would, but I thought it would do well. Um, I really think Tales of Arise kind of
That's what I
like
thought you were gonna say.
I mean, I thought it would do fine. Like, if I'm being honest, I thought like at most that game would hit like 80. Like, if you,
Right.
and again, this is sort of like, you know, just trying to put myself back in this, I would have said like 80s, like, but 81,
Yeah,
82.
like 80. I would have said 80. Yeah.
Yeah. Like like maybe topping out at 83, but for it to hit at 88, like I was pretty, it's like one of the things, well, it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. So,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you. Tales of Arise, I think, was and kind of just I'll say 12 minutes, not the score so much, but just the way that it got the 75. It wasn't just like, yeah, it's a good game with some flaws. It's like, no, I love it, or I think it's trash.
well, it was like it got tens or it got fives. And
Right.
that score very much reflects that.
Right.
Like,
So that is very interesting to me. That one was on my radar leading into it. And, I've got Game Pass. I'll probably boot it up probably before the end of the year, I would imagine. At least I would hope to. And see what I think for myself. But that one was kind of like, huh, okay. Wasn't really expecting that reception, but that's interesting nonetheless. Nate, let's land the plane here pretty soon. We got a couple more
okay.
topics we want to talk about. But of course, we always want to take a look ahead and kind of get hyped. I love getting hyped about it. This is one reason why I love doing this stuff is to get hyped. Let's what games that are coming out in the near future that that are on people's rosters are you looking forward to, or whether you're looking forward to seeing how it scores or just wanting to play the game in general?
Well, I mean, I actually now I have to pull up the I don't have the I should have done this before. The fantasy critic
They give you
actual
some
list.
upcoming games, but those are just like for the next few weeks or so.
Like, well, I just wanted to see what everybody has sort of coming on their rosters here.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
a few I've got on the dock here. I'll just hit. We can maybe riff off of these. Metroid Dread, I think is on your team, and
mhm.
Solar Ash is on your team. And of course, there's Halo Infinite coming out at the end of the year. Back for Blood, which is a game for Marshall that I had counterpicked. Could make some waves. I'm dreading that counterpick more and more each day. And yeah, there's some other things. So what is it you're looking forward to coming up in the next quarter?
Well, I mean, so we mentioned it earlier, but I didn't have anything come out this month, or this quarter. So and I'd love to see Metroid Dread and Solar Ash hit and come out. And Solar Ash, I really liked Hyper Light Drifter,
Hmm.
and this is like one of those games. I think it's a bit of a gamble, especially because one of the writers, and I can't remember her name, she has a bit of a reputation in the industry for just being, oh, it's just like she's one of those people that generates a lot of sort of.
Is she not fitting in with the in crowd?
Well, she's part of the in crowd, but she's
Okay,
also kind of like, uh, if I could remember her name, she's a bit provocative. She's a bit divisive.
sure.
And so like for me, I'm like, good game is good game. And if somebody whose agenda I don't agree with writes a good game, like awesome. So and I just think like that Heart Machine Studios is pretty cool. And
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I'm looking at it here, and I'm seeing, it was your third round pick, so you really put a lot of stock in it at the beginning of the
mhm.
year. This is one of those games too. I agree, it could really hit. Though just a small critique, I think you could have waited to draft that game. I don't think anyone was eyeing it at least that early. I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I was aware of it. I might have drafted it, but I don't know if I would have drafted it that early.
Well, I know that you and I, our tastes sort of run pretty similar, and this is like one of those things. Like
Hmm.
I said, it is the reason I chose it is pretty much Hyper Light Drifter sold me,
Yeah,
like
no,
absolutely
I'm
had
with you on
like,
that. Yeah.
and I was just like, and I had actually played that fairly recently, I think when we drafted, so I was like, yeah, like I'm in.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and yeah, Metroid Dread. I think Metroid Dread, like everything I'm hearing about it, it's generating a lot of really like positive hype
It's
and
had a
or.
nice marketing build-up cycle so
Mhm.
far, as it's nearing release. I think it's coming out. Let me see here. October 8th is what the
Mhm.
website has it for. So
So
really
I'm
just
excited.
about a week away.
Yeah. Looking at some of the others, like I'm just other people's rosters. Uh, oh, geez, like too many things. I'm old, man.
There's a lot here.
Advance Wars out of Luke King Games, Luke Strains,
Hmm.
like the reboot, I think is interesting. I like those games, and I hope that they do well. Do
Yeah.
well. Like it's kind of. Well, I mean, we'll get into that here in a minute, but I'm scared of Halo Infinite. um, it's good.
Hmm.
It could come out and just gut me. This could be like I've been, like I said, sort of hanging out in that top two or three for the most part, and
I'm still split on Halo Infinite. I have no earthly idea how this is going to do.
well, and that's
Partially
the only
because,
thing.
well, sorry, I was just going to partially
Yeah.
because I don't know how is Microsoft going to, like, what are they giving reviewers to review, and how long are they giving them to do it? I think that's going to be pretty important. Like, are they going to separate the campaign and the multiplayer review, for example, to
Well,
where, like, it muddies the waters, and then it's like, well, the campaign is great, but the multiplayer, I can't get into a lobby or something like that. I don't know. I just don't know how
or
this
the
is going to go.
multiplayer is really phenomenal, but the campaign is sort of like middling. And
Yeah.
343, so there's so many things about this, like, and part of like one part of my picking this was like basically, I think you at one point in time during the draft, I was sort of like talking a little bit of trash, and you were like, "I dare you," or like, "Put your money where your mouth is," and I was like, "Okay, like, sure." Um, but I and I have I it's not just that, but 343 Studios has had a really tough time with this franchise. And I think in a lot of ways, this is their last best chance. And if I don't know if they'll be taken off of it completely at this point, but if this thing doesn't like destroy, like I think they're done with this, like, because it's like, so, and I would honestly say, I think if this game is anything less than amazing, that in and of itself is going to kind of sort of reflect poorly on it. So this if it comes out and it's just like a 7 or an 8, that might not be good enough.
Yeah.
And
I don't
and
know. I don't know if they're going to treat Infinite more like a platform going forward, or if there's going to be like a Halo Infinite 2 in
Well,
4
and that's the
years, you
problem with
know?
all these games as service type models is like, what do you do with this stuff? And
Well, the point I was making there, what I was getting at was I could see Infinite having a less than great reception, in December, but then it had like a Sea of Thieves effect, where in like a year or two down the road, it gets its legs under it, it gets some great content in multiplayer, I mean,
Mhm.
and is really, hitting better than it ever did. So I could see something like that playing out, but again, I'm not sure if Microsoft is wanting to treat it more of a platform, or if they're again in 4 or 5 years, we're going to get a sequel to this game with new multiplayer and campaign and all the nine.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think when it comes to Infinite, like there's so like I'm hearing a lot of really great things surrounding like the flights and like the
mhm,
multiplayer
yeah,
betas and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is very cool. Like, and and it's not that I want the game to do poorly. It's just I think like I'm legitimately I have no confidence in 343's ability to like it's sort of a vote of no confidence or a maybe not no confidence, but a very minimal
yeah,
confidence in
and
their
that's a valid
ability.
point. I mean, yeah, they've what reason have they given you to have that great confidence that it's going to be this huge banger? Yeah, no, no, I get it, I get it.
So, I mean, but then on the other side, like anytime I hear anything good, it's like that the Simpsons meme that I throw in there, like I'm in danger, you know. It's just like,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm excited to see what this final quarter really brings because I think I, and maybe this is just me. I think that there's still a lot of room for surprises. We've got
Mhm.
all of October and November, and like, listen, like I told you, I'm holding on to that Pikmin 4, and I don't think it's going to happen. But
Yeah.
Nintendo does weird things, like, and that's why I'm
Well,
actually like not even giving up on Silksong because like it could just be like, oh, it's ready, boom, like
that's why
in
I held on to
November,
that
and just
game.
and it
Mhm.
just blows up.
I had the choice to drop that game, Hollow Knight, or some other game. I can't remember what it was. As far as it was a will release game. It was still marked as a will release game, but I kept Silk Song. I was like, no, they could totally shadow drop that in December.
And I mean
And
they pretty much did that with uh uh Paper Mario Origami whatever thing.
mhm,
Like it was like they announced it and then like a month later it was live on services or
right,
whatever. And I mean so there's that. I mean,
mhm,
I think I don't know, like when it comes out like yes, there's a ton of stuff that we've already sort of seen come through. Um so I don't know. I just there isn't anything sort of really in the next quarter that I think. I mean, I have
mhm,
some games that I think are going to be interesting and sort of mix it up a little bit, but I'm just kind of excited to see what happens because like when I'm looking at a lot of this, there is a ton of stuff in here that like a lot of open, very open sort of rosters still.
mhm,
And not just mine either.
mhm,
Like, there are a lot of people here who have like 3 or 4 games that haven't been released yet. And so
mhm.
we'll
Yeah.
we'll go. And it's just oh, you know what it is, Micah? Astria Ascending came out
For
for me and
oh
it got a 69. I
oh,
didn't lose
it's
points or I didn't gain any.
hold on. Let me refresh. I see a 67. Hold on here.
Yep. So that might be tanking some of my score.
You're right, Astrid. Man, this is I feel like we had this one time with Luke on the air or someone. I can't remember. Basically a score hit right when we were recording. Yeah, I see a
Hmm.
69 here as well now. Um and kind of threw us for a loop. Maybe it was Eddie. I can't remember who I was with when we were like, "Oh, here's a new score we haven't seen yet." So cool. Okay, Astria Ascending. We're seeing it live right here for Beatdown Games. 69, man. So tell me about Astria Ascending, Nate. I don't know anything about this game.
I just thought it looked like a really cool sort of RPG-ish thing. And I was like, could be interesting.
Let
And
me see.
and it was pretty much like I saw some screenshots, some like proof of concept stuff. I was like, we'll see what happens. Um,
Okay,
I
it's
don't
only got 12 critic reviews, so it
so it
could
could come
change.
up.
it could change. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on Astria Ascending. I've got to look into that game and see what's up. Okay, a pair of topics we want to close out with,
Mm-hmm.
Nate, is kind of we're in Q3. We're starting to. I think many of us, mainly because of Alex, are already looking towards next year and starting to think about, okay, let's think, how they want to draft, all this sort of stuff. And we've tossed out a couple of rules ideas throughout the year, and a couple of them I want to just bring up. Not that we're solving them right here and now, but I just want to get your take on them, and maybe some of the things that we talk about will be good talking points, or something that the league can reference back to in the chat, or something like that. So first, let's talk about remasters,
Mm-hmm.
remakes. How do they fit into the league, and what qualifies? Essentially, I think that's a big question. So to level set with everyone real quick, what the rule is for right now is that I guess I should pull up the website and look at the official options. So let me look at it. I want to get the right wording. Apologize for this. I may cut some of this out. Okay, so we ban games that have the remaster tag. So what OpenCritic defines as a remaster is a game that updates graphics or adds very minor features to an existing release. Some examples: Gears of War Ultimate Edition, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker HD, or Uncharted: The Nathan Drake Collection. Those are some examples of a remaster that we do not allow. What we allow is remakes, which
Mm-hmm.
I think still gets misinterpreted a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I set the rules, what I had in mind, Nate, was I think the first year Resident Evil 2 was coming out, and that was a big game that year. That's a remake.
Yeah.
That looks nothing like the original. Yeah, it's got the same story, but the assets are completely rebuilt. It's not even the same thing. Something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, the assets are completely rebuilt. It's almost even it's not a different genre, but it's a different take on the same genre.
I would say actually, I think Final Fantasy VII Remake
Yeah, you might could. Yeah, I guess you could,
is
because it's
complete
turn-based
is a
versus action.
yeah.
So yeah, you totally could put it in a different genre. That's what I think of when I think of a
Mm-hmm.
remake. I don't think of, and this is no offense to Jeff, I told him in the chat, I think it was a good pickup. I don't think Diablo 2 Resurrected. I just don't.
I mean, I don't know. Like I've looked into it a little bit, and it's actually, I think Diablo 2 Resurrected is more of a remake than it is just a straight remaster, because they're actually taking that game and they're sort of like basically putting it in the Diablo 3 engine. So and there are some quality of life improvements. Like I think like the where you're sort of maybe running into problems is that as a general rule, Diablo is kind of samey. Like it's just like
Well,
there
and
aren't
that,
a lot.
if
Go
I can
ahead.
cut you off real quick, that's the spirit I want to capture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want there to be any level of, I know what this game is going to do before I draft it.
Well, and I think and that's I think is fair. Like if we're and that's exactly where I would fall is like remasters. We kind of already have an idea. Like the high water mark has already been set, and so we know sort of where like where it's going to hit around.
Mm-hmm.
And like whereas with a remake, I think things can be a little more up in the air. It's like referencing back to Resident Evil 2 remake. Like yeah, it's not that it looks nothing like, well, I mean it, it's not just a graphical, the entire combat in a lot of ways it's
Mm-hmm.
reminiscent, but it's also
It's different.
it's super evolved. Yeah, it's different, and it's different in a sort of meaningful enough way that you're not really sure how it's going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think to be fair is like when you look at how Resident Evil 3 did fine, but it didn't have like, and some of that was more, I think, based on a lack of content,
Yeah.
more than anything else. But it's like remakes sort of need to be like uncharted waters. Like I would even I don't know, but the Shadow of Colossus remaster remake, whatever that was, that's more of a remaster in my opinion than
Yeah,
anything else.
that is, I think Shadow of the Colossus is a great example. There's another game I'm trying to think of. Maybe it was the recent Tony Hawk Pro Skater, because that was
Yeah.
kind of the same thing in a lot of ways. But Shadow of the Colossus, oh no, it was Demon Souls. It was Demon Souls.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was same developer. That one gets really tough because they are trying to make a carbon copy of the original game with modern graphics.
Well,
So
yeah. Yeah.
okay, it's you go back to my original argument. It's like, well, Micah, they're using all new assets for Demon Souls. It's
But
completely
they're
built from the
not.
ground up. It's like,
They're
well, they are new assets, but it's the level design is all completely the same. Like it is the same game just in a new engine.
yeah.
So that one's another one that I don't really know. I didn't feel great about it that Demon Souls was out there, for example. I didn't feel great about that. It just felt kind of like, yeah, you know exactly what you're going to get. I think we all went for Demon Souls once we saw it was out there. Man, I can't remember what the scramble was to go for that, but everyone knew it was going to be good. So that's kind of again the what I want to avoid. I don't want you to know it's going to be good. I want you to think like, oh yeah, Final Fantasy VII remake. I mean, yeah, of course that's maybe a bad example because it looked good anyway, but like, I don't know what that's going to be. They could really screw it up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not this like, oh yeah, they're following the same formula, which was tried and true back in the day. So I know it's going to be at least an 85. Let me go ahead and pull that one. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So
Well, and
I know
that's sort of when you really think about it too, that is counter to sort of the spirit of the game, but in a lot of ways, those like if you want to sort of look at it like if we're all sort of really like buying into the sort of the meta that we're studios, yeah, obviously I'm going to go for something that's going to make a ton of money,
yeah.
like, yeah. So if I can snap up Demon Souls and I know that's
Mhm.
going to like sell bajillion copies, yeah, I'm going to.
Mhm.
But I think part of again sort of the spirit of the game is to sort of just like say almost take chances, like, and
Mhm.
say like, hey, this actually looks interesting, this is an unknown variable, this is an unknown factor, like let's see what happens with this thing.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. I think where we get into issues a lot of time is because everyone has a different measuring stick of what
Mhm.
is or what constitutes a remake versus a remaster versus something like a Demon Souls.
I think for me the difference has always been like a remaster, there might be is a remaster is basically the same game. They might unlock some frame rates, they might pretty up the engine a little bit, like they might tighten up some of the assets or whatever, but
Hmm.
it's essentially just the same game you've always played. And there might be some very minor quality of life
Hmm.
adjustments. And like I said, I think, the more I sort of think about it, that Diablo 2 sort of like rides the line. It's like it could be a remake, it could be a remaster. It
Hmm.
depends on sort of like the work that was done. I know that and I guess what I would say is that the reason specifically with the Diablo 2, I would say that I think it falls more into the remake category is that the asset packages for that are immense.
Sure.
Like they like rebuilt like and I think just it's not just sort of like, oh hey, like let's sort of like cram this into a new engine and poof,
Yeah,
money
I'm with you.
machine. There's I think whereas like and yeah, a remake is sort of like captures maybe the spirit. The best remakes capture like the spirit of the game and actually like make you almost feel like you're playing that game for the very first time, even if you've played its previous iterations a million times.
For the purposes of the league, I think there's maybe two issues. Is that the first one is that all nine of us, or however many people that are in the league, there might not be one of us that really knows the game well enough or knows enough about the development, what's happening here to really say definitively what it is, if it's a remaster,
Mhm.
remake, or whatever. They may just not be aware. And then two, what I just said, we all have different sort of measuring stick of what
Yeah.
constitutes a remake. So because of that, and I'll close on this, what my final stance will probably be when we get to talking about next year's rules and everything and voting on that or whatever, is that I'm thinking what I'm going to propose is that just doing away with all of it, just doing away with all remasters and all remakes, period. But I
Because
get that that's a
remasters and
controversial opinion.
remakes, they're not going anywhere. If anything, I think this last couple of years has proven that we're probably going to get a lot more of them.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be a popular opinion amongst the rest of the league. I might get shouted down for that, but it just is too much of a headache, and I don't like all this. Like, well, with this game it's okay, and with this one it's not. And I'd rather have a firm set rule where we just it is or it isn't, or we don't worry about it. I guess, just from a commissioner's standpoint, I suppose I don't want the headache with it, but
Yeah,
that's kind of where I sit with it.
yeah.
But yeah, last thing, we won't talk nearly as long about this. We need to go ahead and wrap it up.
Mhm.
But keeper games, the thought was brought up, I think, primarily by Adam, was that we keep one game. You can keep as many as you want, but we would say you keep one game to carry over into the next year. Something that did not release. You're like, man, I was really banking on that one. It didn't come out. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I personally don't have a problem with that. I think that it's sort of, we would have to sort of find some sort of balancing, because like, okay, so like obviously, like if like, let's just say going into next year we were to implement some sort of ruling for a legacy sort of system, you're obviously going to go for Hollow Knight Silk Song. Like, I mean,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
it's, and it's one of those things where, you know, I would say maybe like, if you decide to keep a game, you sacrifice your first round pick. Like, you'd have to have some sort of balancing in there, I think, to
Well, if
I'm
everyone
not
kept a game, although are you saying that not everyone has a game worth keeping this year,
like,
or
I would
whatever year we
say,
start doing it?
yeah, I would say that going like, and I guess this, to me, like, just thinking about it super briefly, just I'm not I think it's fine. And if you don't have a game, because I mean, honestly, I'm looking at my roster and I have a few things that if they don't release, I don't care. Like, I'm not,
Yeah,
I like let's go back to Pikmin 4. Like Pikmin 4, let's just say it doesn't happen this year,
yeah.
which it, who knows, but let's just say it doesn't happen this year. I'm not worried about it for next year. Like, I don't, it's not one of those things where I'm really banking on it. It was like, it was
Right.
more of just like, hey, Pikmin 4, like if it happens, cool. If it doesn't, like, because it's Pikmin. But I think so for me, I'm looking at my roster and I don't have anything in there that I'm like dead set, like, no, I need to have this if it doesn't come out this year. And
Mhm.
so I'm saying like, hey, like, and I'm looking at it and like, I know that you would probably want to hold on to Hollow Knight, because like, I'm going to be honest, if it goes back up into the wild and I get a chance to bid it next year, first round pick.
That is the counter argument, I think, to all this. I think a lot of us are like, yeah, keepers, let's do that. Because most of us can have a game in mind that we would like to keep. And by the way, real quick, we're not keeping any games this year. We're not starting.
No, that's,
It would be
but I'm
something
just
we
saying
enact
like,
next year.
going forward, I do think like, hey, saying like, hey, if people want to do keepers, that's fine. You sacrifice your first round pick.
That's interesting, but the thing I was going to say was, if there's 9 of us and we all keep 9 games, that's 9 really awesome games that aren't going to be available to draft, which
Mhm.
you could argue would make the draft less fun.
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't. It's like, because like you're sort of working into speculatives there,
Sure,
and it's like,
you are.
I honestly, like, the more I just sort of like, the more we talk about it, I really think the best way to sort of do it is say like, hey, you want to keep a game, like if we implement some sort of legacy system, you will give your first round pick. And then what that does too is like, there could be a ton of really awesome stuff on the horizon that all of a sudden you don't get a shot at, because you want to hold on to something
Mm.
from, like, I look at it as pros and
That's an
cons.
interesting way of doing it. I hadn't thought of that aspect, Nate. I'm not gonna lie, because I was thinking more of just like, yeah, everyone keeps a game. You don't have a choice. and
because
then
then you're
we
gonna
just all
lock
draft the
people.
same amount anyway. Just do the draft as normal,
You're
and then I'll
gonna
just
lock people into like the reason I say that is like if somebody
Mhm.
has a roster that they're not super thrilled about,
Yeah,
like
no,
and they're
you're right. I'm with you. This is something worth bringing up. This is kind of why I wanted to have the conversation because
yeah.
you get into some of this nuance that you don't really think about. And I hadn't considered this of like, well, I don't want to keep her. What do you do then? Yeah, that's good stuff. That is a good sort of like strategic. Like it could be a strategy to say like, no, I'm not doing a keeper. I
Well,
want my
and
first round pick. That kind of thing.
let's look at just sort of like, and I know this is all theoretical, we're not doing this, but if we were to sort of move forward with this legacy stuff, like, and you have a bunch of guys who are holding on to like stuff that didn't hit, like you're holding on to Hollow Knight, all of a sudden that's one less dude that I've got to fight off for Horizon Zero or Horizon Forbidden or whatever
Yeah,
West.
yeah.
One less dude I got to fight off for God of War
Mhm.
Ragnarok. One
Yeah,
less dude that I got to fight off for there because there's a ton of stuff that is
yeah.
slated for next year that are they're going to be bangers.
Next year is going to be a 2008 2018 kind of year.
Yeah,
There's some other ones in
absolutely.
the like 1998. Why is it all the eights? That's really weird. What didn't BioShock come out in 2008, or am I thinking 2007?
I mean, I thought BioShock was 2007, and
Maybe it was 2007.
let's
BioShock
not
and Mass
be
Effect and all that stuff.
2017 was no joke either. That was no slouch. Like
You're not wrong because that was the year the Switch came out, which meant Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey and
Horizon Zero
Horizon.
Dawn. Yep.
But yeah, I think 18. That was the
I
God of the
mean,
Year,
yeah.
the God of Year, the God of War, and Spider-Man year. That takes it for my money, but I digress.
I think like I said, for me when I think about it, I'm like, hey, yeah, if you want to hold on to something that you're pretty sure, and even there, you're still sort of like gambling that that game will come out or will be good or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I think there needs to be a significant enough penalty, and for like, because let's be in the first 2 or 3 rounds, like that's when all like the big fish are gobbled up.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's like, yeah, you're holding on to like, yeah, and again, like you're holding on to a theoretical sort of hypothetical situation. You're holding on to Hollow Knight. I
yeah.
like, and let's just say that you like the order is you, then me, and but or whatever, and it's like I'm gonna snap up, yeah, Horizon, like and or God of War or whatever. Like I'm gonna snap up one of those bigger fish because we got a whole bunch of stuff that's like next quarter one is going to be a bear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if things keep the tables.
You get me thinking about like draft order and all that sort of stuff. I think this year, in years past, I'd always just like drawn names out of a cup or something and like recorded a video and like shown you guys. I think I might just do a quick like Zoom meeting or whatever, like where we can all just get on real quick, and if 3 or 4 people can hop on, we'll just do it and then record that, and people can participate, and it'll be a little bit more fun whenever we do
Mhm.
the draft order, which will be towards the end of the year. um Last thing I'll mention about keepers that you have to consider is if we add or subtract any league members, that might affect that a little bit. But your suggestion of, well, if you do have a keeper, you have to forego your first round pick or something like that would remedy that. But anyway, food for thought for the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nate, I think this is you brought the good at being
Really
bad at
good
brevity
at being
to
bad at
the dear
brevity, bruh.
critics, man. God. I think this is the longest dear critics we've ever had.
That beefy boy content, man.
Well, man, thank you so much for joining me and breaking down quarter three, man.
Yeah.
Um,
I was when you threw out the invite, I was like, yeah, heck yeah, man. It's like, you know, and well, this is just a little too self-serving, guys. I'm just gonna say for our commish, he's a heck of a dude. He we recorded an episode of the breakdown, and he basically led the conversation on control. And I mean, I was prepared to like do some research and like go down there, but when my guy was like, "Yo, I'm in," I was like, I'm good. I'm good. Micah's coming.
Control is one of those one of my very favorite games in recent memory. So yeah, I was more than happy to come on and talk shop about that game.
I was glad to have you, man.
It's very good. So yeah, check out that episode of the backlog breakdown.
It comes out.
I was about to say, Wednesday. Is it out? I wasn't sure.
It'll be out on the 29th or whatever, I think. So that's this week, like the week of the Wednesday of the week.
It'll be out by the time you get this, probably.
Yeah.
You will probably not get this before then. Maybe. I don't know. What's today? The 27th? We'll see. We'll see what I can do. I've got a lot of trailers. I haven't gotten a single trailer for this. And usually I have like all that stuff already done by this point in time. So
shame, buddy.
I gotta go out and do some stuff for this. So anyway, Nate, thank you so much for hopping on. Good luck everyone in Q4. And man, we're coming down to it. I'm getting excited for the end and for next year. So guys, good luck, and we will see you next time.
Just remember, guys, you want to pick the games that have 80s. Love you, Alex. Peace.